Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. I hope you're all doing very well, and I hope you've had a great week. As always, thank you so much for this week's questions. If you've got questions for next week's Q&A, put them in the comments section below. If you check the video description, there are links to my Patreon and the music I make, and to some free cabinet IRs and a few other select affiliate links if you want to support the channel, or get some free IRs that you can use with your modeler or in your DAW, whatever you want. They're there for people to make music with. So without further ado, let's get into this week's questions. And the first question comes from Enam Khan. The Floyd Rose guitars that are being made so that you can restrict your picking depth is kind of interesting. I think I don't care about that. I think I would just encourage people and say, hey, just play a guitar that you like and work on your technique rather than have a guitar with this like pre-baked thing in there. But I understand that most guitars have a whole bunch of like pre-baked stuff in there, like, arm contours and bridges that are recessed or not recessed and upper fret access and a bunch of stuff like that. So maybe that's just me being, conservative in regards to guitar design. It's one of those things people, myself included, go, no one's doing anything new with guitars, and then someone tries to do something new and go, no, not like that. So yeah, that's something which personally doesn't really interest me too much, but I can totally understand maybe if you were an intermediate player and you wanted to get a guitar that could provide a better experience for picking, maybe that could provide it. I think the only video I've really seen with it is the Tim Pierce video, and Tim's awesome. So if Tim likes it, it's probably really good. And I'm an idiot, so if I don't like it, well, you can fill in the blank there, but I haven't personally tried one. So I don't know, but it kind of seems a little bit too close to novelty for my liking. But then again, maybe I should be playing a Telecaster with 15 gauge strings on there. So yeah. Good question. What does everybody else think about those particular guitars and that idea that restricting your picking depth is going to make you a better player? Is it a good idea? Is it a novelty? Discuss amongst yourselves, or jump on the Discord server, which is linked in the video description, and we can all chat about it there. Okay. RTB Music says, after playing a lot of the Fractal products, you've never seen me use dual amps. Is there any particular reason? Laziness, I would chalk that up to. A lot of the time, I kind of get the sound I'm looking for out of like a handful of amps. And I think the reason I like the Axe effects is I kind of know the sound that I want for my main guitar sounds, and then that lets me access those sounds really quickly. And it just so happens that, using a single amp block seems to do the trick. The exception would be actually the last Ragdoll single we put out, because when we tracked that, we explicitly got into the guts and said, okay, let's definitely do a dual amp thing here and try to like blend the character of two different amps just to get something really unique out of it. I think we ended up using the Uberschall model and the Atomica model, and it was like a little bit of Atomica blended in. It was mostly Uber. I feel like I did a video about that whole setup a little while ago, and I really like the guitar sound that we pulled on that particular single. So maybe I should do that more. I have a bunch of presets which are just like all my favorite Marshalls, all my favorite Fenders, and they use two amp blocks, but not in conjunction. So yeah, if you'd like to see me do a video on like blending amp blocks in the Axe effects, that would probably be a cool one to put up on the channel. So again, if you want to hear that, let me know in the comments. This one comes from Brian Merck. If I had to do a power blues trio gig, think Philip Sayce, SRV, what rig setup would I use? Good question. I actually saw Philip Sayce at the Dallas Guitar Show when I was there a couple of years ago. Philip Sayce is amazing, and you all need to go and listen to his stuff. I got onto his stuff maybe 2012, 2013 or something like that, and I really liked it. I think I was like listening to a bunch of like SRV and Eric Gales and stuff like that, and it kind of popped up probably on YouTube as a like, you might like this. So getting to see him live and just do his thing, it was powerful. It was a proper power trio gig. So Philip is awesome. I would probably, again, this is the laziness factor here, probably just use an FM3, because when I think about that sound, it's like some kind of cranked up Fender amp with a tube screamer in front of it, and every now and then you're going to throw on like a rotary or like some kind of slapback echo or something. So yeah, I am pretty confident I can get those sounds out of the Fractal gear, but part of the aesthetic of the kind of blues power trio is that rawness and the fact that you're kind of like fighting the amp. So I would definitely play a Strat. I would probably play my 70s Strat that I've got here with the Sir Michael Landau pickups. And there is definitely that appeal to get some kind of like Fender style amp. Maybe I'd use a Marshall JTM 45 because I have one of those and I'm familiar with it. Chuck the like Anarchy Audio workhorse in front of it and maybe like some kind of basic, like a Boss DM2 or something, and just roll from there. That would be fun. That would be a really, really fun gig to do. I always just kind of think of what we do with Ragdoll as like, it's kind of drop C heavy blues anyway. Like, even though a lot of the sounds are modern, I think the approach to playing in a trio, you know, you want to sound as big and full as possible, whether it's like kind of an SRV style thing where you're playing, you know, blues, or whether you're doing what we do, which is kind of like a King's X thing. I think it's all kind of drawing from the same core set of inspiration. So excellent question there. I'll have to try and do that as a video as well. Okay, this one comes from Rick R. It's about the FM3. You're a little old school, Rick, and that's totally fine. You want to be able to play the FM3 through your Mesa 5050 in quads. Do it. The FM3 is an amazing preamp and effects processor. I think the perception that it's not the best way to run it is that you probably won't be making use of the power amp models in the FM3 because you'll be using your power amp, and stuff like Plexis get their character from power amp distortion. So you might miss out on that, but just fire up like the Mark IV model and run it through your 5050 and absolutely crank it, because it's going to sound amazing. And you have all the convenience of, you know, really easy scene switching and effects built in, and you have thump and you have the Mesa power amps and quads, which are amazing. So that sounds like an amazing rig waiting to happen right there. This one comes from LP. What are some situations you find yourself reaching for an actual amp instead of the Fractal gear? I always kind of look at amps as, you know, there's that classic saying, like, you know, if you put restrictions on the parameters when you're trying to, you know, draw a picture or something, like you can only use charcoal, it's going to lead you in a particular direction. So I know a lot of people get option paralysis with the Fractal stuff. I was saying earlier, for me, I know the sound that I want and then I go and get it from there. But sometimes the opposite is true with an amp. Like, you don't know the sound you want, and you plug into the amp and you just use it for its character, and you kind of embrace the character. Like a Soldano isn't going to sound like a Fender, so it's like a positive feedback loop. You get that like Soldano-iness out of it, and then you want to dial in more of that character. So that would be my main justification for all the amps that I still have, even though I can get all of those sounds out of the Fractal. Maybe it's like an initial conditions thing, like you have that starting point and you're just gonna pick it up and run with it. So and real amps smell amazing. That's a great reason to have them around as well. If anyone wants to come out with a signature cologne for me, it would be Tubes and Musty Old Dust Getting Hot. So look out for that in 2022. This one comes from Betters. How about a review of the Roland VG8? Got a Roland VG8 here, and I pulled it out, I want to say just before the initial kind of COVID lockdowns, and I was like, cool, I've got the SY1000 and the VG8, and I just haven't got around to doing it yet. So I've kind of gone on this like rack gear odyssey, and yeah, maybe the VG8 actually needs to come out. And oh, I remember why I didn't do it. The little screen is starting to fail. It still works, still sounds fine, but yeah, it's just a little bit hard to tweak. I've got a couple of the cards for it as well. So yeah, VG8 video, very cool piece of technology. That's my dad's VG8, and I always remember as a kid when he bought that and him sort of saying, hey, come and check this out. I was probably like 6 or 7, and he's playing a guitar and it sounds like a saxophone, and it's like, my tiny little brain just exploded right then. I didn't know that he had a special pickup. I just thought that was a skill specific to him, that he had that ability to make his guitar sound like a saxophone. So yeah, growing up a little later, it's like, the VG8, of course. So I really do need to feature that, because for me, it's a very important piece of music technology. Alrighty, D. Ryan Buchanan. Have I tried the Headrush units? One of my students has one. One of my other students actually just bought one. So they're going to bring it around and we're going to dial in some tones. So I will actually get a better idea of where it's at the moment. So I haven't really been keeping up with it, but go and check out Miles Green on YouTube, because he's done a bunch of Headrush tutorials, and he's just a phenomenal player. Shout out to Miles. I always remember the first time he came in here for a lesson when he was like 12 years old. And, you know, I hate to be that guy who says it, but some people just have it. And he was definitely one of those people who, as soon as I heard him play, it was like, you've got it. And he's just kind of picked up the ball and ran with it. And fantastic player. And check out his YouTube channel. Are all my PRS guitars tuned to drop C? No, the single cut lives in drop C. That's the main ragdoll guitar. And then the others kind of flit around between standard, down a half step, and drop C. This one normally lives in standard. This is my break glass in case of emergency guitar when I have to just go and do a fill-in gig, because I can get all the sounds I want. And before I finish this question, I was asked about whether I could get the kind of Vi Legacy module sound that I got on that Vi Legacy module video out of the Axe FX 3. And I think I did, so I'll play a little bit on this guitar. It's a PRS in standard Cali Leggy model. I'll start on one of the parallel modes, and then I'll switch over to the humbucker, and then I'll kick a DS1 model in front of it all. So yeah, what do we get? Something like that. It's a really enjoyable sound to play around with. So hopefully that answers those two questions. How are the frets holding up on my single cut PRS? They, I reckon, will need to be refretted probably in the next 2 years, depending on how quickly gigs really come back in full force over here. They're starting to get a little bit kind of dented, especially around the kind of riff zone, like frets 0, 3, and 5. But otherwise, I mean, I've got a custom 24, my other custom 24, where the frets are like, that's due for a refret right now, but it still plays really, really well, even though the frets are basically just totally flat and pitted. So yeah, I'm gonna try and thrash that one as much as possible. I will probably get it redone in stainless steel fret wire as well, so that might make a kind of cool video when that finally comes around as well, just because, you know, I play that guitar so much, it makes sense to put on the most durable fret wire as possible. Okay, another Axe FX question. This one's from The Woeful Guitar. When playing live, how do you balance the adjustments going to front of house and to your headphones? For example, like if you turn up the room in the cab block, that'll be going to front of house and to your in-ears. I basically just try and optimize the front of house sound. And then, for example, if we're running our own ears, we've got one of the Behringer XR18s, and you can add things like reverb to the in-ear sends on there, and only the in-ear sends. So that's kind of a way around that. I would use the built-in effects on the in-ears mixer to just basically add kind of like an effects bus on there to add the room simulation. Then front of house has kind of a drier guitar sound. Alternatively, if you're on an Axe FX 3, and you can do this on the FM3 as well, is just split out before the end of your signal and send, you know, use like a reverb block for your kind of in-ears sound, but send a totally dry signal to front of house. That would be another way around doing it. That kind of works easily if you're doing your own ears as well, because then you've just got, you know, you're going to be sending that signal to your own ears anyway. So yeah, that's how I would do it. Just optimize the experience for everybody except yourself, and you will be the world's most popular guitar player because because that's a rare commodity. Normally it's like guitar players like, everything's about me, got to optimize my sound at the expense of the band. I would much rather people come to the gig and love the sound of the band and say, hey Leon, you suck, rather than the other way around. So yeah, that's how I would approach that. Do a Jimi Hendrix vid. Ooh, that would be spicy. I feel like One, I mean, everybody loves Hendrix, but it'd have to be a how not to play like Hendrix kind of video, because I mean, it's like low-hanging fruit. Like if you were going to do the most generic guitar video for a non-guitar playing audience ever, you do a Hendrix video. But then if you're making a Hendrix video for a guitar playing audience, if you're not 1,000% accurate, you're just going to get ripped for it. So it would definitely have to be a how not to be Jimmy kind of video, because I certainly know how not to be Jimmy. This one is from Tim. Have I ever played or owned an ESP guitar? I've never owned one. I actually have an LTD here that I've got a little kind of project happening for. It's a really cool guitar, but not like one of the high-end ESPs. But every time I play an ESP, pretty impressed, especially the Eclipse. That's a really cool guitar. And is it the M series, just the kind of super strat style ones? They're sweet guitars. I will say one of my least favorite guitars is the ESP Viper. Apologies to anybody out there. Something about that offset SG thing just doesn't resonate with me. If it resonates for you, fantastic. I've played Vipers and they're good guitars, but just aesthetically, I think I'm a little off. But then people look at this and think it's the ugliest thing in the world, and I disagree with them. And that's just life. So yeah, all the Japanese ESPs I've played have been fantastic. This one comes from Konstantinos. What are my opinions, or what is my opinion on Atomic? I've got a CLR here and I love it. It's a great full range wedge. Still got an amplifier. Fantastic piece of gear. It seems like they have, as you said, kind of fallen off the map maybe in the last year or two. But you know, the amplifier still sounds fantastic, especially the kind of Marshall style models and the 5150. The amplifier box, if you can get one, that's like the ultimate little gigging backup. I wish Fractal would make something like that. If I could just put my Mark II C++ or Mark IV tone in a little box like that, that would be the ultimate backup rig. In fact, I could probably gig with that. That would be amazing. But if you want to upgrade to something else, I think at the moment the FM3 is amazing. I love it. I gig with it, and it's the same sounds as the Axe-FX 3 on the floor with 3 foot switches. It's half the price as well. And I know a lot of people get hung up on processing power, but the whole thing with Fractal is that it is deep. You know, you can only use one amp block, but it's got 4 channels, and there's the controllers and the modifiers are what make it worth it. Even if you just use it for effects, the effects are amazing. So yeah, if you did get an FM3, I don't think you would be disappointed right there. Alrighty, what do I think about the MT15 for a power amp? Could it be used for rehearsals and live? Definitely for rehearsals. I did a few gigs with the Orange Dark Terror as a power amp, and that was totally fine. So I think the MT15 would work fine. However, I think kind of like in the long run, if you want a power amp, get something like a Matrix, like a stereo power amp, solid state. It's going to be lighter. You can rack it up. It's out of the way. We used to gig with it with guitar down one channel and bass down the other channel, driving cabs, and it was amazing. So if you've already got an MT15, then by all means, just plug it in, use it as a power amp. But I think at some point you want like a racked up power amp, like I said, like a Matrix or maybe a Fryette or something like that. So that will probably be more flexible, put it that way. So, alrighty. Do I find it hard to do leads or bends past the 12th fret on my PRS guitars? I don't think this was intentional, but there's a solid like PRS fractal kind of theme, fractal and amp theme here, which I'm totally cool with. You know what? This guitar, shout out to Tim at MT Guitars. He set this one up for me. It had a little bend in the neck that I didn't know that. The Plex scan showed that it had a slight bend, and then he set it up and all the little issues I had with it. But I think it holds up pretty good. You can do like the Sykes-Gilmore overbend thing up around the 20th fret on this. So yeah, maybe just check either your string gauge or the truss rod, or get a second opinion on the setup. So you should definitely be able to do this on these guitars. This one's from Matthew Truxell. How deep into the UAD plugin environment have you gone? Any differences, preferences to native plugins? Well, every video you see on the channel, I'm using the UAD, the 1176 compressor on my voice and the Neve preamp. And like basically every amp video you see on the channel has the UAD Unison Neve preamp as the mic pre. I've got the EMT plate the 140, and I've got the LA2A sims, and I use those all the time. It's a dangerous ecosystem, the UAD stuff. I think the guitar amp modeling sounds pretty good. I haven't bought any of the stuff. I've literally just gone, I bought this because I didn't want to buy separate mic pre's and compressors, so I'm going to get one mic pre, I'll get the two kind of classic compressors, and I'll get a really good sounding reverb that I can run off the UAD DSP, and I'm really happy with them. I would say I've got a bunch of the Fab Filter stuff and the Valhalla stuff, and they're my other kind of go-tos with the UAD things. So I mean, the UAD stuff is expensive. Like, do I get the $300 or $400 UAD lexicon emulation, or do I pay $50 for the Valhalla one? It's a pretty easy one there when you're considering that kind of thing. But it's pretty cool. Do you still use your amplifier modeler? Does it still hold up? Yeah, I should do a shootout with that and the new X stuff. I think that would be interesting. Good question there. And unfortunately, Atomic does not release updates anymore. Yeah, it would be cool if they came out with, I think mostly it would be cool to hear like an effects update if they do a Mark II unit or something like that. So that'll be interesting to see. And yeah, for everyone who saw the micro pitch delay from Eventide yesterday, yes, I'm going to do a like rack pedal board thing. So classic rack tones out of a pedal board. That will be coming out in the next couple of weeks as well. Bunch of other rack videos and the usual stuff. And yeah, that's the Q&A for this week. I'll play you all out. If you've got questions for next week, let me know in the video description. Otherwise, take it easy.